The loss of a child has to be just devastating to any parent. But to watch your child die in such a horrific way as Christopher Bizilj did has to be even more traumatic. With me now to talk about how to cope is psychotherapist Fran Sherman. She joins us from Miami. Fran, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, we look at this case, and it's horrible. I mean, for a little boy, his brother, who was just a little boy, the family friend who suggested that, and the doctor, how do they move on from this?
You know, I think as listening to the mom speak, it's so difficult to move forward. It's every parent's worst nightmare to lose a child, and then to see a child die in such a horrible manner. I think the mom is right, you know, one foot in front of the other, one step at a time, one breath at a time. It takes so much hard work and lots and lots and lots of counseling, therapy, grief counseling, individual counseling, group grief counseling. I mean, it's an overwhelming process. It's probably one of the most horrific things that anybody could ever experience in a lifetime.
Mm. And the friend who was on the stand, Gary Hobeka, he's a registered nurse, and he was there, right. And he's the one who said, "Hey, let's go to this gun expo." How does he feel? Almost like survivor guilt, I guess, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. He's the one that suggested this outing for the family. He's a good friend. They were both obviously medical professionals, and I'm sure he feels tremendous guilt and remorse, as does Dr. Bizilj. You know, they're the ones that put, not knowingly, these children in harm's way. So for him to get past what happened, again, takes so much effort. And I want to just, speak to that. You know, as far as doing grief work, it's many people survive loss and grief by denial, which is a very wonderful defense mechanism. It sort of helps us to move forward. But, and a lot of parents that I've worked with who have lost a child, they try to get through their day, to live life, but there's always moments in the day that things creep up and they just are so mournful. One of the things that I suggest is to try to talk about your children, talk to them, make their presence real and part of your life, acknowledge that they're gone, but write letters to them, think about them, and then try to somehow, as difficult as this is, make sense of why this happened, as horrific as it is. I think maybe what these parents can do is say, maybe we can educate other parents in not placing such weapons in the hands of their children. Again, even though they didn't do it thinking that anything would happen, it's devastating, and maybe the world can learn from this horrible incident.
Well, it is, and they had been up to apparently one of these expos about 2 years prior, according to their friend Gary Hobeka. But Dr. Charles Bizilj, he's going to take the stand on Monday, and here's just a little bit of his heartbreaking testimony, talking about when he saw his son on the ground. Take a listen.
Chris was on the ground. I ran over to him. His eyes were open, and I saw no reason for him to be on the ground. And I tried to talk to him, and he didn't respond. And I put my hand behind his head to try to pick him up, and there was a large portion of his cranium missing, and I put my hand against the back of his head.
Fran, you can see him just kind of looking down, recalling every moment when he saw his little son Christopher on the ground. And here he is. He's an ER doc. He's an ER doctor. He sees trauma on a daily basis. And so is his friend Gary Hobeka is a registered nurse in an emergency room, in an ER too. And sometimes I'm wondering, you hear him talk about the cranium, I think he's just trying to, it sounds, maybe compartmentalize it and just look at it medically and not think about his son?
I think you're absolutely right. I think, as I'm hearing him speak as a mother, it's just, it makes every part of your body just so sick and so painful. I think that he sort of at that moment tried to put on his doctor's cap, and I think that we all, if we see our child hurt, injured, we want to do whatever we can to try to save them. So I think that that moment he was trying his best to maybe look at his son in a clinical way to possibly try to save him, even though he probably knew in his intelligent mind that he couldn't do anything. But his grief is so clearly overwhelming. But yes, I think as a professional, you do absolutely try to compartmentalize. It's the only way to move forward. It's the only way to do your job.
How does somebody like Dr. Bizilj just turn the switch on and turn the switch off? Some people are wondering, how could he do that? How does the mind function that he could do that? I guess just as a trained professional.
It is, Mike. It takes so many years. I think I can tell you, being a therapist for as long as I have, the first few years doing it, you kind of take everything home with you, and you feel really sad about a lot of stuff. But if you want to survive in a helping profession, you have to learn how to kind of turn it off and to move forward, because you see crisis and tragedy all the time, especially as an ER doc. He has to see people dying all the time, other children dying, and watching loved ones cry and weep. So I think you do learn to shut off that part of your brain. Again, when it comes to your own family, you kind of lose sight of your own loved ones, of that reality. So I think I'm hearing from him just complete shock and utter terror, although he sounds very kind of flat and unemotionless, and again tried to put on that part of his brain to try to save his child. It's unimaginable. The grief is just overwhelming.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine, Fran. And his brother Colin, who was there also, who witnessed this. How can he ever be normal?
Normal is a relative question. It's
true.
a great question. It's a great question. Do I think that he will always remember what happened to his brother? Absolutely. Again, it will take a lot of really good grief counseling. There are groups that different places run for siblings of people who have lost a sibling. And sometimes kids can say, I'm going to take this part of my brother and put him into me, and I can carry on his name and his legacy by doing that. So that's another thing I tell people all the time. Try to take something of them that you really liked. If they laughed a lot, if they smiled a lot, something that you can hold on to with them. But he will always remember his brother. This will always be tragic. And somehow, again, with lots of work, lots of support, lots of good therapy, hopefully he can go on and lead a fairly normal life. But it's so hard. Again, tragic is the best word that I can use.
It's unimaginable, Fran Sherman.
I know.
And,
I hear you sighing, and I feel the same way.
Having seen so much as a law enforcement officer and as a volunteer fire chief over the years, you just wonder how this family will ever be able to cope again. Psychotherapist Fran Sherman joining us out of Miami. Thank you so much for your insight, and I think we all hope that this family gets the help that they need.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks. You.